Good evening and welcome to the regular City Council meeting of January 28th, 2023. We are now called to order. It is 7 o'clock p.m. Would all please rise for the pledge? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. We all have copies of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the agenda as distributed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is approved as distributed. Next up, approval of the minutes. The minutes appear on pages 5 through 8 of the packet. Are there any revisions or corrections to the minutes as distributed? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved as distributed. First up on our agenda, we have a public hearing regarding the Township 361 right-of-way plat. The instructions for a public hearing are printed on page 9 of the packet. We'll begin with a staff presentation. There will not be an applicant's presentation, and then we will move on to public comment. So Ben Baker is here to represent the staff presentation, and it is 7:05 p.m. We will call that to order.
All right, thank you, Mayor Noel and members of the City Council. City staff did publish a public hearing notice at City Hall to the newspaper, and it was delivered by mail to everybody within 350 feet of the project location, including the 2 townships. So I just wanted to make that note. I'm going to be going through the staff report on page 33. So I'll go through the report. And then I know afterwards there's some time for comments. And then later on in the agenda, that will actually be when you consider approval of this particular item. So where is this project? 361st Street is west of the new high school and Community Spirit Park. It goes from Broadway to Traverse Road. It's about 3/4 of a mile. It's currently gravel. It is located within 3 governmental entities, Oshawa Township, Traverse Township, and the City of St. Peter. This roadway has seen significant increase in the amount of traffic and dust since the high school and park were constructed back in 2017. Due to that and maintenance and safety concerns, the 2 neighboring townships, along with support of the city, applied for a local road improvement program, or LRIP, funding to upgrade the road from a rural section to an urban section, basically a gravel road to a paved road with curb and gutter. And then MnDOT in June of 2021 actually awarded a grant of $1.25 million for this project. The total cost for the project is going to be about $2 million. The remainder of that would come from MSA funds. So in order to construct this new collector road, which was identified in our transportation plan, we need to have 80 feet of right-of-way. That accommodates the roadway, sidewalk trail, and then the necessary utilities to get through. So back in 2021 of August of 2021, the council actually authorized the city engineer to prepare a right-of-way plat. So that plat is attached, and Minnesota statute actually allows official maps like this right-of-way plat to be created to preserve and protect these right-of-way corridors. Preparation of a right-of-way plat is beneficial in that it allows the needed right-of-way parcels to be purchased by referencing the parcel number in the purchase agreement rather than creating a lengthy survey description for each parcel. So this particular right-of-way plat actually shows 8 parcels. They're labeled on that attachment. and it shows, I think one of them's 4A. There's 6 parcels that relate to the right-of-way that we need as far as the extra 40 or 40 plus 40 for 80 feet. And the 2 with the A behind them are actually for stormwater parcels. So, over this past year, there's also been an appraisal done by Robinson Appraisals. So Public Works Director Moulton and myself have met with 5 of the 6 property owners, and we have been in contact with the 6. The majority of the property owners are in support of the project and have expressed a willingness to come to terms on a land price. So we will continue to work with the property owners over the next couple months to finalize the negotiations and the purchase agreements before bringing this back to council for further action. As far as the timeline goes, right now, our city engineer, Bolton and Mink, is between half and 3/4 way done with the actual design, and that'll be coming back to you later. So the next step in this larger process is that we would be going out for bids sometime in late winter here. And then from there, we would actually construct the project probably this summer, if bids come in okay. So with that, there is a bigger version on your table of the actual right-of-way plat called 361st Avenue. Because it's located outside of city limits, we're calling it that current name. Later on, once the project's constructed, we will actually annex the whole roadway in, and then we'll come up with a new city name, new city street name for that. Also attached is the general location map. So with that, that concludes staff's report.
Yes.
And Ben, the action that's requested later in the meeting is to plat the area that is subject to the improvement, is that correct?
That is correct, yes, just one step in a lot larger process. So
All right.
tonight, we're just considering approval of the plat. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline and background so that you knew what was going on.
Thank you very much. And as Ben mentioned, this is going to come up in new business later on the agenda. We're going to move on to public comment. If there are any members of the public that would like to comment as part of this public hearing, everybody will have 5 minutes. We'll ask you to come up to the table to introduce yourself and give your address for the record. Is there any member of the public who'd like to make comment tonight? Come on up.
Evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bob Lambert. I live at 36233 Fort Road, St. Peter. We were notified on this plat, although we don't own any property that affects the plat. First of all, I'd like to just state that I do understand this is simply a public hearing for a plat for a right-of-way. It doesn't, it's not approving a drainage project or the system. But that's what I want to just talk about for a couple of minutes, just because I'm giving you fair warning that every time this piece of property that will eventually have a drainage system that affects our property, we're going to speak against it. And I'll summarize it very quickly. I've given you in your packet, you understand what our whole issue is. But for the record, since the county started drainage systems and directing water to the creek systems, that dumped the property onto our property without an outlet, we have begun losing the use of that property. And now that 36 acres or whatever it is that we still own there just north of the high school, that has water and sewer on basically 3 sides of it. We have access to it. And so now we have interest from developers that at least want to just talk to us about it. But when they see the flooding on it, they want to walk away with it. They just say, solve that issue and we'll be interested. So it behooves not only us, but the city as well, to solve this issue. And the issue is not only just drainage, where we have 2 creeks at this end of the project that is dumping water on our property with no outlet. And but further on, all the way up north to Robards Creek, there's 2 more creeks that are dumping water into that same eventual system. This should concern the city because we have all of this water from farm fields that's run off that has a lot of nitrates in it that's coming down into our sand prairie and getting into your drinking water. Eventually, this water is going to have to make its way to the Minnesota River. The state of Minnesota doesn't want that water untreated getting into the Minnesota River either. So there should eventually be a plan that would create a series of ponds that would slow the water, direct the water where it's supposed to go to the Minnesota River without ruining our property. And I would say that Dirt Merchant's property just to the west of our property is affected even worse than ours is. And then as flooding occurs, and I think this spring will be a good example of what the problems are because we've had all this snow. And if we get a quick melt, you're going to see the flooding occur all the way up to Robards Creek. And I guess with that, I am only putting you on record. I don't want to stand before you at some time in the future when we're not getting this thing and having you folks say, you should have told us a long time ago. Because I'm telling you now, I'll tell you again, I've told you in the past, I'll tell you again and again, we've got a problem here. We hope it's resolved by the study that I think you're going to commission. Pete talked about some $75,000 or something like that study that's going to take a look at how to address this. I hope that does address it and addresses our issues. And if it doesn't, then we'll have to address it sooner rather than later, because kicking the can down the road doesn't solve our problem, your problem, other people's problem that are further west and north of us as well. So that's all I've got to say tonight.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
thank you very much.
I'd just like to say, thank you for being so detailed and actually in presenting your argument in such a respectful manner. I do appreciate that, and as well as the detail that went into your letter, or into your letter thoroughly. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Is there any other member of the public who'd like to address us tonight? All right, hearing nothing further, we will adjourn this public hearing at 7:16 p.m. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins, oh, sorry, I'm skipping over visitors. We do have time on our agenda, in addition to the public hearing tonight, to provide for visitor comments. We have time on our agenda for visitors to address us on any agenda item. Does not appear we have any member of the audience who'd like to address us on agenda items. We have time for general visitor comments. Is there any member of the audience who'd like to address us on any matter whatsoever? Hearing none, now we will move on to the approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda begins with the memo on page 12 and concludes with the resolution on page 32. The consent agenda includes the following items: renewal licenses for the term indicated within the packet to the St. Peter Ambassadors, 2 temporary gambling licenses. The following equipment which the city no longer needs is hereby declared as surplus property, and staff is directed to provide for the public sale as directed by city code. From electric, we have a 45-foot enclosed trailer. The following employee appointments and intern appointments are approved at the wages indicated: Cale Bennett, Natalie Bacon, Susan Leach, and Raina Ramhilt, all within the Recreation Department. And the schedule of disbursements for January 5th through January 18th, 2023. Are there any questions or comments on items in the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blumenfeld. Aye. Councilmember Sharstrom.
Aye.
Councilmember Wynn.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. We have no items of unfinished business tonight, so we will move on to new business. The first item is adoption of a resolution adopting a right-of-way plat for Township 361. And that begins with a memo on page 33 of the packet. And Ben, you are back to speak to us again about this project.
So we held our public hearing earlier in the meeting. We did have a member from the audience come and provide some comments, and there was a letter also in your packet that referred to that same issue. With that, On page 37 is the resolution looking to adopt. And the Planning Commission looked at this back earlier in January, on January 5th, and they did recommend approval of the plat. So again, this is simply just the plat we're looking at, the 80 feet of right-of-way, a fourth of which was platted with the Community Spirit and High School project. So we do already have that 40 feet in city limits in ownership, but it would be just the other 3/4 that we're looking to plat and then go after some purchase agreements. We do have both our Public Works Director and our City Engineer tonight if you have questions on drainage and stormwater.
Well, let's start with Ben. Well, we've got a lot of questions. We'll start with Ben and then we'll move over to the other side.
So just to clarify, there's those two parcels, 4A and 6A, that are closest to Traverse. Those are planned to be retention basins for the stormwater that would be collected on a less than permeable surface directed towards the curb and gutter, and will actually go north and not south towards the gentleman's property that was here talking, correct?
I believe partially that is correct. The one on the north end that you're talking about, I think that's parcel 6A. That would continue, that it does collect both stormwater basins, as you noted, collect stormwater from the roadway, and then deliver that to the stormwater basins for treatment, and then ultimately that'll discharge through infiltration, but ultimately it'll discharge to the storm sewer systems that are already in place. On the north end, that's basically the Traverse Road ditch. That'll continue flowing down to the south of the map, but east along the roadway, and then ultimately discharge through those culverts. That's where all that water goes right now. The stormwater system or the ponding system, which is designated by parcel 4A, that'll handle drainage, anything occurring south of the main crossing there. I guess we refer to that as County Dish 33A, I believe it is. That's that ditch or the tree line on the very north side of the school and the city park property there. That'll handle anything that is draining from the south part of the roadway, which it'll treat that water and do the same thing, but that'll ultimately discharge to that drainage ditch because that's where all that water wants to go right now, and we're not changing that. We are maintaining the same drainage characteristics that are existing and not increasing the stormwater rate and not increasing the flows, the rate or the quantity of water. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Emily and then Dustin.
That actually answered my question.
Oh, okay.
It more or less answered mine as well, but I'm gonna pivot my question just a little bit, because I'm really concerned about the environmental impact when we move from a permeable road to an impermeable road, and so I'm wondering if the city would consider, along the roadside, maybe there would be, room for, there's some native sedges that have really deep root systems that could help, with some of that water retention before it even gets to these drainage ponds. Is that something that you would consider looking into as a part of the study, or?
Well, I would think we would be willing to look at anything. I mean, at the city's direction, and city council's direction, we can take a look at any option you would want to consider as part of that roadway design. Right now, what we're proposing to do is, it's a typical 40-foot wide roadway. It is a collector road, so I always wonder in the back of my mind, do we really need a 40-foot wide roadway there? Can we go with a simple 36-foot wide, face to curb to face to curb? But, based on our subdivision policy and the ordinances that have previously been adopted, we're going with the standard 80-foot right-of-way and a 40-foot face-to-face curb. So that's already been decided for us, I guess. So we could narrow that up a hair, by 4 feet or so, therefore reducing the impervious area that's created. But in the end, right now, we're looking at that 40-foot face-to-face with boulevards that are turf, a small drainage, or I like to call it drainage ditch, a drainage system on the westerly side of the roadway. We're not allowing, the roadway is not going to be low enough such that water that's flowing over ground from the fields is going to be able to overtop and get onto that roadway, because if it does, we have a lot of rural drainage that is getting to our roadway system and getting to the stormwater basins that we don't or can't treat basically because it'll overload our stormwater treatment system. So the intent is to allow the water from those county ditches, the 33A, and then also the one on the very south end of the project. We're intending to just basically allow those to be flow through. So put a culvert in, allow it to continue underneath the roadway, and then put all that water in the other ditch system in a pipe. Right now, that's currently in a ditch, and I know there's been concern about having that ditch along the school and the city park. So the intent is to at least propose to put that all in a pipe, put it underground, and then turf the boulevards, add trees, that sort of thing on the easterly side. But like I said, it's still in design right now, so at the city's direction, we can look at any options you like for turf out there.
So if I may, Jeff, is it accurate to say that the amount of increased stormwater runoff and going from the current road, which is a gravel or rock road, to bituminous is insignificant compared to the 6,000 acres of agricultural runoff that lies directly west of this location?
Very much so. I mean,
And so we have the ability, and we're following the requirements related to handling any additional stormwater runoff within the system that's proposed.
correct.
And so then the next question is that part of that system that's proposed to handle that is a grading and better definition of the ditches that are abutting this property, because right now they are relatively flat and ill-defined.
That is correct.
And as we do those ditches, there's opportunity for additional plantings that could help in the agricultural runoff, specifically on the west side of that roadway.
Exactly. That's the same thing I was thinking on the westerly side of the roadway, that there wasn't a ditch system along that entire area. When I say a ditch system, I'm talking a very small, maybe 4 foot wide at the bottom, 1 to 2 feet deep is all. But essentially what it'll do is it'll keep water, drain water positively one direction all to the north, I believe it is, from the north side of that County Ditch 33A, which is on the north side of the high school there, north side of City Park. So that'll all continue flowing along the westerly side to the north and through that small ditch system, right?
And so as a part of the construction project, there will end up being what I might term as a rehabilitation of the ditches. So they'll be broadened and more clearly defined to ensure that the water flows where we want it to flow. But it also means that there'll be some level of turf restoration that occurs in that area. And so there'll be opportunity for a number of different types of vegetation. This isn't an application where we would plant Kentucky bluegrass or anything like that, is it?
Not in the bottom of a ditch, not necessarily, unless you want it to look like a yard. But I mean, it's serving as a ditch. And a lot of times the MnDOT and county city ditch mixes aren't that type. They're the just wetland. I shouldn't say a wetland mix, but there's a variety of different plantings in there. It's just not a bluegrass or a rye or anything like that. So.
Sure.
There
Oh.
are just lots of different types of plants that have really deep root systems that can help retain a lot of that water too. So that's what I'm curious about in general, is just maybe being open to looking into that as the project moves forward.
Yeah, I definitely think we should definitely take a look at it and see if we can do it. I'm sure we can. It's just I have to weigh the pros and cons to it, I guess, and just confirm. So as Todd mentioned, this whole area, this is I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the contours, but this whole area is the lowest area, one of the lowest areas in St. Peter on our westerly side. So any water that drains to this region struggles to get out of here, and it's always been that way from as long as, at least current history, 60s, and even before then likely. But I know in the '69 flood they've had some issues over there, but it's just so flat out there, and everything wants to drain to the north there.
If I can, Madam Mayor, ask one other question or one clarification. So Jeff, I know a couple folks, or there's been at least 2 or 3 mentions of a study that's occurring. Not to give us a 15-minute dissertation on the nature of that study, but that study doesn't relate to the right-of-way plat. It really relates principally to better controlling and holding back water from that 60 or 6,000 plus agricultural area. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd like to talk on that one a lot longer, because that's a topic that we could talk about for days. It's a very challenging one too, but that study doesn't have anything to do with the Redway plat, because that is something that we're gonna have to work hand in hand with the county, with the SWCD, the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, to come up with a plan, because in the back of my mind, we wanna do something up on top of the bluff there to make the best use of our resources.
So my point in providing for that question related to the nuance of this, which is that study doesn't relate to the stormwater runoff on this project. It really relates to acreage that is further west, where agricultural runoff through additional tiling has occurred over the last 30 years that is moving water more quickly from west to east.
So is the hope that that water, we're impacting it closer to the source as opposed to?
That study is trying to figure that out. The best alternatives, Pete, is that a way to phrase it? The best alternatives to ensure that the flow rate does not grow.
I think Carrie had a question.
Yeah, so, Bolton and Mink, we authorized Bolton Mink to prepare the right-of-way plat for us. I just wanted a refresher on local road improvement dollars that we received. Does that only cover the cost of construction and, constructing the road, or does it include engineering costs as well?
So yes, it does. However, in this instance, the total cost of the project is greater than the amount of LRIP dollars that we received. So we'll be looking to use MSA dollars for a portion of that. There will also be an assessment that's provided for, principally to the school district, and this was agreed to previously relative to the ditch that is on the east side of the roadway and putting that in a pipe, so to speak. So you do have the resources in hand to make this project go, assuming bids come in within the budget realm that we expect.
I was just curious about the grant dollars and what they can and cannot be used for. So you just said, yes, local road improvement funds can include engineering costs, and then.
They cannot.
They cannot.
No, they can only include roadway improvements and then stormwater. They don't even include right-of-way or anything like that.
And then
But the MSA dollars cover those other
The
portions.
municipal state aid dollars can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, that was my question.
Dustin, did you have a question? No? All right.
Putting my glasses back on.
Any other questions?
I guess just
Yeah.
one more. You mentioned that you've met with 5 of the property owners. There's still one to work out details with. Is that, what's the timeline for that as we move forward?
We hope to, in the next month or two, be able to wrap that process up, so.
And do we have to, we meet with them to discuss what, just information?
They're provided with the appraisal, and then this plat to show them what we're looking to acquire. And then with that information, the appraisal gives them a number to consider, and then they come back and say that they're okay with it or not okay, and if they're not, then we negotiate out something that works for both us and the city, or for the city and for them, so.
All right. So sometimes that process might drag out a little bit,
Right.
just as with negotiating.
I think it's important to note too that, and I'll let the attorney chime in if I don't say this correctly, but currently where the roadway is planned to go is over a prescriptive easement. So you could build this roadway without additional parcels, without buying additional land. And it's important for the property owners, the abutting landowners, to understand that as well. You have a right to build that road over that property. Our preference would be to come to an agreement with all the property owners, because we see very clearly that it's a benefit to the community, but it's also a benefit to them, based, even if you base it solely on the commentary that Mr. Lampert provided, and the future of the community, and certainly for utility placement and other things. So I think we feel like we're in a good spot at this point.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing nothing further, we're going to move on to the resolution, which is on page 37 of the packet. The resolution approving right-of-way plat number 5 at 361st Avenue. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBosse,
Aye.
Councilmember Rutland,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Thank you very much. Moving along to adoption of a resolution authorizing issuance of a request for proposals for a city branding project. The memo for that begins on page 38 of the packet.
Mayor members, this is an item that had its genesis at a goal-setting session. Additional discussion was held at a workshop, as is your pretty customary practice. And so at that workshop, you reviewed the goals that are listed on page 38, which I list as being 6. I mean, I think you could break it up a little bit differently, and maybe it's really 4, maybe it's really 8, but something like that. And then you'll see a draft request for proposals that's indicated within, or in your packet on page 40 to 41. The resolution is really directing staff to utilize this draft RFP as the solicitation for these services. It's anticipated that should you move forward and direct this to go forward, you would see proposals that would come back, and we discussed a process to interview folks that may be providing a proposal as well. You had budgeted resources for this activity going forward, and so you're really ready should you choose to move forward. No additional action would take place if you don't direct solicitation as within this process has been described with the RFP. And then ultimately, you'd pass a resolution to select a company, partnership, an entity to provide the services that are described or provided for within the response of the RFP. The resolution's on page 42, directing staff to solicit proposals related to this rebranding effort.
Thank you. Any questions for Todd? Hearing none, the resolution authorizing issuance of a request for proposals for city rebranding effort is on page 42 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeBosse,
Aye.
Councilmember Rutland,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpston,
Aye.
Councilmember Rand,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move along to adoption of resolutions adopting the 2023 and 2024 water fund budgets and proposed rate increases. This item includes 2 resolutions, one approving the budget and another approving rates. And Sally is here to speak to us about this.
Okay, Mayor Noel and City Council, the water fund budgets, the memo starts on page 43 and concludes with the second resolution on page 60. What we're asking for tonight is the approval of a resolution on page 58 for the 2023 and 2024 water fund. Budget amounts, the first resolution is for budget amounts. For 2023, the budget is $3,337,608, and for 2024, it's $3,463,951. The second resolution is for a 1% rate increase effective April 1st of 2023, and that would be for customers for their bills due June 15th with our timing and how the billing cycle runs. And then the second increase is January 1st, 2024 of 1%, and those are for bills due on March 15th of 2024. As we get into the background, the water fund provides the operation of the city wells and aquifers, the water treatment facilities, the 2 water towers, the ground storage reservoirs, and over 54 miles of pipe that are in the ground throughout St. Peter. The 2023 proposed budget is a 3.4% increase from the 2022 budget, and the 2024 budget proposed is a 7% increase over 2023, mainly driven by wages for our employees, health insurance costs for our employees, and then just basic inflation. We all know fuel costs have gone up, and also the supplies we talked about earlier about the cost of pipe and everything else that we use in the city. Detailed budgets are found on pages 52 to 57 of the packet, and as you know, even though you approve the budget, anything over $25,000 does come back to you on as an individual budget item and as discussed. So just approving the budget doesn't give us carte blanche to go out and spend everything. We do come back and visit you on anything over $25,000. There's also a 10-year detailed capital plan on page 48, and then funding sources on pages 49 to 50. The 2023 budget anticipates capital costs to be funded from reserves in the amount of $776,950, of which $333 is for membrane replacements, and $333,000. We have been putting money away for since the water plant was built, and we know there's a life cycle on these membranes. They've come to a time where we need to replace those. We'll buy down the reserve, and then we'll start putting so much away for the next 10 years. So in 10 years, when we need to replace them again, we will have money put aside for that. So that's in the budget too. There's also some bonding, which we'll be doing bonding over late 2023 or early 2024. And there's some large projects, the Highway 169, 22 and Jefferson Avenue, which will be taking place this year in 2023. We're also talking about the Pine Street improvements for road reconstruction, and also the Park Row, and then Township 361. And we'll be budgeting, or a total of $1.4 million for that. Capital costs for 2024, $803,000, of which $315 will be bonded, the rest will be used in reserves. So total bonding for projects across water, stormwater, and wastewater will be $1.8 million. As you know, the water fund does transfer 6.5% into the general fund to cover other things. We've been doing this for quite a few years, and we're planning to do that going forward. Again, we have talked about 1% increase for each of the budget years, and for 2023, as I said, that will take effect April 1st, and then in 2024, it'll be January 1st. Additional revenues generated by this increase will be $34,423 for 2023 and $34,767 for 2024. The rest of the budget, we left all the other revenues basically flat. Somewhat water related or weather related, but also new construction is not figured into the growth right now. We're not sure what that's gonna be. So that would give us additional revenue as we do new construction, whether it's commercial or residential. But that, we're basically leaving those flat year over year. One of the goals that we're trying to set up is to have an unrestricted fund balance for 4 months, 4 months of the operating expenses, or $597,897 for 2023 and $640,000 for 2024. With this budget and these increases, by the end of 2024, the projected cash balance will be short of that goal of $640,000 at $168,292. The water fund is receiving transfers in from the wastewater fund for both 2023 and 2024 of $550,000. As debt was retired in the wastewater projects, we have always thought that we would use those funds to help make the water fund closer to our reserve targets. And we are working on that as we go forward. So for 2023 and 2024, that's still happening. So as we go through that, what we're looking for right now, the reserve balance at the end of 2022 is projected to be $341,890. We have operating expenditures of $1,705,802, and capital and bonding expenditures of $2,029,589. At the end of 2024, as I said, the reserve balance is projected to be $168,292, operating expenditures of $1,920,059, and capital and bonding expenditures of $2,482,363. We are asking you to approve resolutions on page 58 to approve the budgets for the 2023 and 2024 budgets. Questions?
Questions for Sally?
Yeah.
I see, you have to explain to me again why we're dropping our meter charge down $6 a month,
Yeah,
page
what page?
59. base monthly charge for domestic services.
What page was that again, Daryl?
Page 59.
It's the second resolution.
Going from $16.40 a month to $10.56 a month for the meters. Basically, that's your base fee going down $6 a month.
Oh, that shouldn't be that much. 16, it should be 16.
1656.
16.56 and
Yep.
16.56.
Yep,
Same with the one down below,
Yes.
irrigation, 16.40 on,
Yeah.
on 1/4/1 and 23, and 16.56 on one.
yep, yep. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. Sorry about that.
Brad?
No, just to clarify, so that all of those reflect 1% increases,
Yes,
correct?
they do.
Okay.
Yes, they do. On those dates that we did.
So it's a 1% increase on the base charge and a 1% on the
Water,
water also,
the gallons, yep,
gallons also. Thank you.
yep.
Additional questions? All right, hearing none. First up, we're going to consider the resolution adopting the 2023 and 2024 water and fund budgets on page 58 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefett. Aye. Councilmember Sharpsburg.
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye. That resolution is approved. We will move on to the resolution adopting water rates with the corrections indicated previously in the meeting. The 2024 rates, 1056 corrected to 1656, both in the first and the second list. Is there a motion to approve the resolution with those corrections?
So moved as corrected.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Bluefett.
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpsburg.
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis.
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to our next item of new business, which is the adoption of resolutions adopting the 2023 and 2024 wastewater fund budgets and proposed rate increases. Once again, we're going to have two resolutions, and Sally's here to talk about them.
Mayor Noel and council members, the information on wastewater begins on page 61 of the packet and ends with resolutions on pages 75 and 76. Again, wastewater provides for the operation of the city's wastewater collection system, the lift stations, treatment facilities, lab testing, treatment and disposal of biosolids, reporting to MPCA, discharge of the treated water into the Minnesota River, and the city's commitment to minimize our environmental impact as demonstrated through the quality treatment and the very low impact of effluent water discharge into the Minnesota River. And again, we are here requesting the approval of a 2-year budget cycle. This is the third time we've done a 2-year budget cycle. As stated, state statute does not require budgets for enterprise funds, but we think it's great practice to set those and give staff direction on where we're going for the next 2 years. Detailed budgets are on pages 70 to 74 of the packet. The 2023 and 2024 operating expenses are very similar to what's been approved in prior years, and there are no personnel adds in this budget. The 2023 operating expenses are budgeted at $3,900,876, which is a 5% above the 2022 budget, and 2024 is $104,916, or 7.82% of the 2023 budget. Again, this does not say we can spend everything. Anything over $25,000 as a one-time purchase will come back to you for approval. Again, the increases are driven by wages, benefits, fuel, and increased utility costs. The wastewater transfers 6.5% of their revenues, plus an additional $200,000 to the general fund, and is also transferring $550,000 to the water fund in 2023 and 2024. Capital projects planned for 2023 and 2024 total $1,082,591 for 2023 and $477,555. And those are found in the packet also, the 10-year CIP project. Again, large projects for 2023 and 2024 are the 16922 Jefferson Avenue, Park Road reconstruction, Pine Street, Township 361, and then there's also the roundabout down at St. Julian that there's some work on, but that is funded out of the ATP funds, federal and state. So we'll be doing that. Debt for wastewater has continually, we retired everything but one debt payment. So it's decreased 1.2 million over the 2021 and 2022 years. So that is why we're able to transfer money into the water fund to help buoy that up and get that a little bit closer to our reserve targets. There's one remaining wastewater debt amount of 1.455 million is still due on that debt, and the final payment on that debt is in 2043. So we're working down those again, as I said. Again, for this fund, we are proposing a 1% rate increase for years 23 and 24. Again, the 2023 rate will take effect April 1st. The 2024 will take effect on January 1st. And this translates for the wastewater fund to a $37,507 increase for 2023 over projected year-end 2022. And for 2024, it's a $37,883 or $883 over 2023. Again, we're projecting flat water usage and wastewater usage because wastewater is based on water usage. So we're projecting that to be flat. Again, this is very weather dependent. If you have a dry summer, people do use the irrigation and regular water, so that's usually higher. If it's a wet summer, it can go up and down. And that wastewater goals, rates have been as much, or we've used, the lowest was probably this year, we're at about 473 million gallons. And the highest has been in 2019 where we've had 870 million gallons treated. And that was a flood year or a wetter year, so we've treated a lot more. Key indicators for the wastewater fund is found on page 69. There's a graph. We have two goals. One is to have operating income for our enterprise funds, and wastewater is has an operating income, and at the end of 2024 it'll be $1,689,218. And then our other goal is to have a reserve balance of 4 months of operating expenditures at the end of the year. At the end of 2024, the goal of 4 months would be $748,254. And from that graph, you can see we are projected to be at $1,505,522, which still includes the transfers that we did into the water fund. So wastewater, we're doing very well. Again, we are proposing a 1% rate increase for April 1st, 2023, which would show up on the June 15th bill of 2023 due, and that's $37,507. And then the January 1st, 2024 rate increase will be $37,882,000, and that will be seen by our residents on bills due March 15th of 2024. So what we're asking is approval of the resolution on page 75 for wastewater fund budgets for 2023 in the amount of $3,900,876, and for 24, $4,104,916.
Thank you so much. Are there questions for Sally? Brad?
Not a question for Sally, just a note, when we pass this, I'm proposing an amendment to transfer $100,000 in 2023 and 2024 into the stormwater fund. As we discussed last week, this will help address the deficit in the stormwater fund. While staff did indicate we could run a deficit there, in this case, if we eliminate that deficit, it will in 2 years, essentially 2 years from now, having a smaller deficit or having a surplus will help to alleviate any need for larger increases. Looking at the numbers here, we have 1.5 million as our projected cash balance in 2024 right now. That is 757,000, so over double our projected goal at the end of 2024. With this transfer, we would still have $550,000 over our goal. So it would, over our goal reserve. So this would easily leave us comfortably in our reserve amount, while also helping to alleviate the need for,
Carrie?
Just, we discussed this at the workshop. Todd, can you remind us what the alternative to transfers to stormwater was? And sort of maintain, and setting a precedent for that, and what the impact of that is. We kind of think of water and wastewater in one area and then stormwater in the other. I know we talked about this at great lengths, but it was, a long meeting, so what did you recommend as an alternative to what Brad suggested?
I don't remember recommending an alternative to that. My overall concern was the philosophical connection between water and wastewater based on utilization and how they're metered and charged, where that is not the case with stormwater. Transferring dollars is at the pleasure of the city council, and so it's not illogical or irrational or anything like that to want to transfer funds. My concern is that it does change how the balance works relative to, again, the basis for charge within water and wastewater versus the basis for charge within stormwater. My perspective is that, and if I remember the numbers right, I'm sorry I don't have the stormwater numbers in my head, Brad, maybe you remember, but it was like 63,000 or 65,000?
that was with the 10% increase, it was like a $60,000 deficit.
So 60-ish thousand. So from my perspective, while that is not unimportant, that is not significant in the operation of your funds. You have, as has been discussed, cash to be able to cover that. I'd rather see you take action with his stormwater to cover that. But again, all of these are reasonable, rational ways to look at that. My only questions would be relative to this is just to be clear from a staff perspective what the amendment means. And so, Brad, just because you went pretty quick through that and I was writing as quickly as I could, I think what you were indicating was that you were making an amendment for an additional $100,000 transfer from wastewater to stormwater in '23 and $100,000 in 2024, correct?
Correct.
So $100,000 in each of those years. The only effect that would have essentially within the numbers that Sally's put together would be a reduction in the reserves, as Brad indicated. It's not an additional expenditure that would impact the total cash movement within this fund. So that's more than you asked, sorry, but.
And so the reason is to cover deficit that exists in stormwater?
Yes, and I could, sorry, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to address that. Why I'd like to, well, number one, I think part of it is while, yes, it historically hasn't been treated that way, this is actually a significant reserve. I also hate, we've always done it that way. But also when you talk about funds not being tied, I mean, we do general fund transfers every year out of every utility fund. So I do think that's something. But really the big driver is, well, number one, that the $60,000 deficit was if we go with the 10% rate increase. If we cut it to 5%, the deficit's going to go over $100,000. Deficits drive rate increases, and there's no guarantee we're going to be, there's no guarantee 2 years from now I'm going to be here, and another set of city council members sitting here might look and see a $150,000 deficit and say, we've got to take care of this now, and we've got to drive a significant rate increase. So this is from a future plan, this is a future planning perspective Yes, we understand that, okay, yeah, we're gonna be $100,000 in a deficit of stormwater, but we've got this money over here to cover it. 2 years from now, there's no saying any of us are here or who is here won't have a panic attack when they see a deficit that large. So this is basically future planning, trying to tackle future rate increases before and taking those into account. With simply put, an account balance, it's money on a spreadsheet is what it all amounts to. All the money's in the same account. It's on a spreadsheet, but it can drive policy changes depending on how the data is presented. And really, that's the big thing, is how are we going to present the data, particularly 2 years from now, and how is that going to drive policy 2 years from now? That's why I strongly believe we need to do this. Because as I say, if we go with our 5% stormwater increase instead of 10, you're looking at a deficit of over $100,000 at this point. And so that's why I think we need to look at this from a future policy planning perspective as to what we're going to be deciding on for the 25-26 budget.
I'll say I definitely, I agree with you in terms of concern about large rate increases and impact on residents in St. Peter, and not wanting to see huge leaps in rate increases and working toward more systematic, sort of smaller incremental changes. I guess my preference would be, I'd like to see the numbers. I'd rather table this and bring it back when we've seen because we haven't seen the 5% modeled out yet. So my preference would be to table this rather than vote on an amendment. That's my preference. I don't know how others feel, Carrie.
Are we able to vote on the budget and the increases, and then discuss, when we discussed stormwater, then consider a transfer at that point?
You could handle it really just quickly in probably 2 or 3 separate ways. One of which is you could provide approval tonight and then direct a modification in the future that could be related to the budget, or just direct staff to provide for a transfer from wastewater to stormwater, and it not necessarily be articulated in these 2 budgets or modified into the future for the 2024 budget. You could do nothing. And
It's nice to have a plan to work with, and we've all talked about the plan. That's why I'm interested in approving the budget, I guess, budgets.
yeah, again, from my perspective, related to the budget, any transfer doesn't impact the overall budget. It's just a matter of how you want to handle that transfer. And so you could do that as at the time of approval of the budget, and saying we're just going to transfer these dollars, and that's embedded in the budget through a modification. Or you could come back at any given point and say, we don't care what the budget said, we want you to transfer those dollars, here's a motion to approve to transfer those dollars, and we could do it in that way. I prefer not to see that, because that gets a little bit unwieldy into the future and why and how things have happened, so it's probably better as part of an overall budget, I would suggest.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? We do not have a second to Brad's motion.
I didn't actually formally propose it.
Oh, okay.
I will make a motion to, for the budget as proposed, with the amendment of a transfer of $100,000 in 2023 and 2024 to the stormwater budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Right now, we're voting not on either of the resolutions. We're voting on the amendment.
We moved to approve the budget.
Yeah, I moved to approve the budget
budget.
with
Oh,
that
you
amendment.
did move the,
Yeah,
oh,
I
you
moved the
moved.
budget with the amendment,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. Yep. So, all right. Thanks for getting me on track. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Sharstrom?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis?
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
I'm only voting no because I'd rather see it side by side with the 5% projections, but I do not necessarily oppose the transfer.
Councilmember DeVos?
Aye.
Councilmember Rutherford?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. Next up, we have a resolution adopting wastewater rates. That is on page 76 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve the rates?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ram,
Aye.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blueflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpster.
Aye.
The resolution is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move on to adoption of a resolution approving the St. Peter Ambassador's request for city assistance for the St. Patrick's Day Parade. That begins with the memo on page 78 of the packet.
Mayor, members, the information that you see within your packet is substantially similar to what you've seen in previous years from the ambassadors related to St. Patrick's Day. It provides for traffic control around the route from approximately 4 p.m. to the end of the parade, the use of South 3rd Street from 1 block north of Broadway, which is really the area where they organize the parade or line up the parade, down to an end at Mulberry Street, and then no parking signs that are placed. Sometime, typically, we would do that around noontime. Just to be clear, Mayor members, in the past, we have not towed or ticketed cars outside off this parade route, but if you thought that was important, we could do that, but that's not our recommendation as a part of this. So there may be cars interspersed along that area, so I want you to be aware of that. As a part of this, the ambassadors are required to provide for certificate of insurance in the amount stated, which is your typical requirement. And so we would provide at the corners barricades and other things that are necessary, so Pete's crew set those out in advance, and the ambassadors and the police department and others help get those set up, both in advance of the parade and at the end of the parade. The resolutions included in your packet, as is the memo from, or the letter from the ambassadors. Happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Questions for Todd? Hearing none, the resolution authorizing city assistance for the St. Patrick's Day Parade is on page 80 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Pettis,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Mayor Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Blueflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpster,
Aye.
Councilmember Ram.
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to our final item of new business, which is the adoption of a resolution declaring intent to reimburse for certain project expenditures incurred prior to the issuance of bonding. That begins with a memo on page 81 of the packet.
So Mayor members, Sally and I are tag teaming, so if you have very specific tricky questions, those go to Sally, and the easy questions, please go to me. This really relates to something that you do on occasion, but not often, but on occasion, as we've talked about within a number of your different budgets, including those that you discussed tonight. We have a number of projects that will likely require debt service issuance. The process that we're asking you to undertake tonight is a declaration of those, because what happens legally is that then allows you to reimburse yourself for any expenditures that you might incur prior to bond issuance, to be reimbursed when the bond issuance occurs. And so that's really what this resolution is doing. And we do this every couple of years, give or take a little bit, depending on the volume of projects and a number of other factors, cost of those projects. And so that's what you see the resolution on page 82 and 83 doing. Again, I'd be happy to stand for any easy questions, and the tough ones should go to Sally.
Questions for Todd or Sally? Daryl?
Tremendous Tree Park. That's a project in here.
Yes, it is.
Is it listed in here?
It is not, because that's not something, at least at this point, that we've anticipated issuing debt for. The council could change its mind on this, but this is really, at least from my perspective, a listing of those projects that are a go with a defined or a narrowly defined timeline for that.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Ben?
We just need to, if we decide to do tremendous, do something similar in advance to reimburse ourselves, correct? It's 60 days?
Yeah,
Recommended 60 days in advance?
Yeah, I think there
of the
would,
project.
I think there would likely need to be some additional discussion about how you put that financing mechanism together relative to tremendous. From my perspective, based on previous council discussion and what you seen and agreed to in previous council packets has been ARP funds right now are set aside to the tune of approximately $650,000 to help move that project forward. I think there's still some work to be done in identifying the clear scope of that and making that move forward. At least, again, from my perspective, I had envisioned any additional costs that you might have relative to, speaking specifically about Tremendous now, would be funded in future years through general fund proceeds, donations, and other things. Not necessarily a debt issuance, although that could be something that you do relative to Tremendous and other improvements throughout Gorman Park. Again, from my perspective, you don't have a fully approved Gorman Park plan quite yet. So while that could be something that comes up, if there is debt issuance, we would handle it at that time.
Any other questions? Hearing none, the resolution declaring the official intent of the City of St. Peter to reimburse certain expenditures from the proceeds of bonds to be issued by the city is on pages 82 and 83 of the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Johnson?
Aye.
Mayor Noel?
Aye.
Councilmember DeBoss?
Aye.
Councilmember Bluefeld?
Aye.
Councilmember Sharpstra?
Aye.
Councilmember Ram?
Aye.
Councilmember Paris?
Aye.
The resolution is approved. We will move on to reports, which are next up on the agenda. I have nothing to report tonight, so I'll pass it on to any council members who have items they'd like to share. Daryl?
Yes, I attended the District 7 ATP meeting last week, and there's a number of new federal programs coming down. Their notice of funding and notice of intent are coming out next couple of weeks or next couple months. Some of those programs are going to have a very short turnaround time, but we may find advantageous for our city to look into. The electric charging stations, there's some more electric charging stations coming. There's also some things on grant opportunities for drainage improvements, resiliency, and also just some efficiency or carbon reduction grants. So we should try to stay ahead of those and hopefully we can apply for those. And they will be ongoing next couple of years beyond that also. So just look for them and hopefully we can take advantage of some of those because there'll be some money out there.
And ATP is.
Air Transportation Partnership.
Thank you.
So it's the money that came from the infrastructure bill of about a year and a half ago. There's still a bunch of things being rolled out from that. So.
Daryl, based on your kind of inside knowledge, since you were at that meeting, is it true that these dollars are probably available for a wider spectrum activities that might not be quite as directly related to transportation as previous dollars were?
Yes. Street lighting may qualify in efficiencies for like diesel generators to cut down on carbon and things like that. Some of them don't have to be road projects, have nothing to do with transportation. Especially the carbon reduction one, the electric charging stations, street lighting improvements and things like that. Energy efficiency for buildings even, they're funded through there to reduce carbon. So yes, that is correct. So yeah, it's
Thank you.
and there may not be a lot of people eligible for them or able to apply for them also, so it may be a fairly easy grant to get because a lot of the rules aren't written yet. So.
We have an inside track in some of those areas because of the previous work that we've done, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, thanks very much, Daryl. Anybody else have anything they'd like to share? All right, we'll throw it over to Todd.
Remember, this is the first report that I have. I'd actually like to defer to Pete and provide for a Christmas tree collection report. I think this is just fascinating. I'm hesitating calling Pete the Grinch because, as you know in that story, the Grinch took the trees away and then brought them back all fixed. That's not the case with this, Pete. What happens to those trees and how many did you get?
We got about 100 trees. It took a couple days to get them because we had several snow events during that time, but staff was very persistent and collected those, and they went out to our compost site. They'll be dealt with at that point.
So ultimately they're composted. I know someone had asked me, what happens to those Christmas trees? So they get chipped and compost it along with other trees and branches and other things that you get. And so it's a service that people help, that they pay for through their environmental service companies. Yeah.
Carrie?
I have a question, Pete. So is the trend of people with real Christmas trees going up or down based on your collection data?
This year it seems up a little bit, but you know, it really varies. Some disposal and other methods, I don't know where they're taking them or what they're doing, but
And they can haul them down to the compost site,
Yeah.
and lots of people
Right.
do, but
Yeah.
we had to pick up about 100, so.
And if any are buried in snow and reveal themselves in the
Reveal in the
spring, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to cover that one because I think it's an interesting one in a number of different ways, and it's just a fun one to talk about at the end of the Christmas season. Thanks, Pete.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
The next one I had, Madam Mayor, members, is just to mention a couple different things. One of which is we saw a snow emergency. You know, we don't have many snow emergencies. We had one this year, we had one last year. Hopefully we won't have any more. I want to encourage folks, not just for snow emergencies alone, but for other more emergency notifications. Not like basketball's canceled, that might be an emergency to you, but citywide, that's not an emergency. But for emergencies that are really citywide, we continue to use the Nixle system of notification. So I want to promote that just for a few moments and encourage people to sign up. It provides a number of different options for notification, whether it's texting or emailing. It also provides you the opportunity to set it up so that, as an example, your phone doesn't ring at 2 o'clock in the morning with a text. You can set certain parameters so that it doesn't bother you. We don't use it a lot because fortunately we don't have a lot of those citywide emergencies, but we do use it for snow emergencies. We can use it for major outages, whether it's power or water or sewer or other things like that. Fortunately, we have great systems, and so those are far and few between. But again, it is a wonderful place to receive emergency information about the city. So Nixle, and we'll make sure to include some additional information, whether it's in the hot sheet or on our Facebook page or on our website related to that. I'd also like to mention the city information line, and we'll promote this as well too. We provide a number of pieces of data through just calling in and pressing the right digit, and you can find out some information and also let us know about challenges, whether it's sidewalks or other things. So again, promoting the opportunity that we have for information provision through that city information line. Barb, help me out. I can't remember the number. Do you remember the number?
934-0675.
0675, 934-0675. Thanks, Barb. Madam Mayor, the members, that's all I have for you for tonight.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
I almost wondered if he was gonna get a second on that one or not.
Right.